Different's great, but being different for the sake of being different, I'm not a big fan of, right? If you just want to be different for the sake of
technology, increased, I would hide behind it.
And you start to hear some of their challenges, and yes,
because it speaks to the core of who you are and what drives you forward. Because what makes you different is what drives you. Welcome, everybody, to the Master Connector Show. I'm your host, Rob Genovesi. I should say co-host, but I'm alone today. My buddy, Steve Spiro, he's off in Bali. He was off last week. He's off this week. And I was just joking around with our guests. You know, Steve and I run this show. We've been friends for 27 years or so. And he goes off to Bali for a couple of weeks. I'm like, I didn't approve that. Like, how can I approve a vacation of my co-host? We got a show to run. But no, Steve's awesome. He firmly deserves it. And Steve, I hope you're having a great time in Bali. Probably not thinking about what we're doing here, but welcome anyway. And I'm glad you're with us today. You know, we're going live every single Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time on LinkedIn. And, you know, we would love for you to tune in live. Some people do. Some people catch the replay. And if you want to catch the replay, you can go to YouTube, your YouTube channel. We can catch the episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. But, you know, joining live is another thing. We want to interact with people. See, this is the Master Connector Show, and it's about connecting with people. And we're always looking for people to get with people. You know, I heard the saying, you probably heard it too, that, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. And I've been on both sides. And I could say sometimes going alone, I love going fast. Success favors speed. But, you know, going with others is so much more fulfilling. You can go so much farther, but you want to go with the right people. And so how do you find the right people? It's about connecting. This is not the Master Networker show, you know, and Steve Spiro is not the Master Networker. He chose Master Connector. He is the Master Connector. And he chose that because connecting with people is different than networking. This is not about exchanging business cards or profiles or whatever information. This is about making a true connection so you can understand what another person is working towards. They can understand what you're working towards and hopefully work towards it together. And if you want to see who's coming up, because we are booked out, we got a few more shows on the website here, masterconnector.show. You want to go there and see who's coming up on the show. Because if you can't make it every week, but I hope you can, bookmark your calendar, Wednesdays, 1 o'clock Eastern time. You can go on masterconnector.show and see who's coming up, because we have amazing, amazing guests coming at you every single week. People who are going to share their stories, their experiences, their skill sets. I believe that we all have skills that are in sets, and in between the sets, there are gaps. And in order to truly succeed, you've got to close the gaps or fill the gaps with the things you don't yet know. That's what we're doing here every single week. Steve and I, you know, we're looking to fill the gaps in our knowledge so we can go farther, faster. No, that's the idea. And you need people to do that. And so, you know, when I started out in connecting, I'll say networking because people understand that, you know, back in 19, you know, I spent 25 plus years in corporate. And 2019, went out full-time business of my own and jumped right into networking. And realized one thing, maybe it was just something I picked up along the way, because I met a lot of people who were just doing the exchange of information. Hey, what do you do? Great. If I know anybody that needs that, I'll send them your way. That's terrible. It's terrible. I was looking for relationships. I want to have fun when I'm working with people. I don't want to just go, here's a referral, or can you send me a referral, or just get, yes, I want business. I want revenue. I work towards it. But I want to enjoy it along the way. And it's always better going with people. But I ran into a problem. I was telling our guests, and wait till you meet Laura. She and I just met. But man, I almost missed beginning the show because we were just having a great conversation. And we were talking about, you know, the title of today's show, which is leaning into awkward. I was poster child for awkwardness way back when. I was so socially inept. I couldn't even have a conversation. I'm not overstating. I could not hold a conversation because I didn't know what to say. I was very self-conscious. I was wondering what you thought about me every step of the way. And there's a lot of shyness that was there. I am an introvert. It's an energy thing. So I've got to conserve my social energy. But, you know, listen, when we're talking about the awkwardness, some people try and mask it, or they try and get away from it, or they try and push it to the side. When in reality, sometimes the awkwardness, that thing that makes us a little different, is the thing we need to lean into because it attracts people. It makes us people know that, hey, this is a real person. And look, if you're joining us, hopefully we want you to get in the comments. We want you to get in there. We want you to comment. We want you to like, share. This is not, about lurking in there. This is about interacting. You got questions for myself or the guest? Put them in the comments. We'll find out. We want to get to the bottom of what you don't understand, and I'll ask questions, and maybe you can get some insight from that. And also let us know where you're tuning in from, because we get people tuning in from around the world sometimes, which is pretty exciting. So listen, I want to get right to it. So if you're there, type in hashtag let's go. We're going to kick this thing off because I want to bring up our guest. So listen, let's go. Laura Thorne is on a mission to test the theory that anything is possible by taking leaps and never settling for societal expectations. With a strategic mindset that challenges the traditional roles often assigned to women, Laura has built two thriving businesses, Hey Alec Productions and Wildebeest Publishing Company. She's also the creative force behind the off-the-wall and up-close travel reality show and the Art of Movie Making Film Fest in New York City, where she's breaking new ground in the worlds of media and storytelling. At the heart of Laura's work is her leadership framework, The Role Model Way, which encapsulates her commitment to empowering others to take risks and pursue their passions. Please welcome to the show, Laura Thorne. What's up, Laura?
Hey, Rob, who wrote that bio? That sounds amazing. Who is that?
Who is that person? I know, right? Don't you sometimes, when you get a good intro, you're like, hey, are they talking about me? Because if you're like me, I'm like, I really haven't done anything. I don't know what they're talking about.
Right? I mean, after 10 years of business self-employed, you've written 100 different bios and they are always evolving and changing. I'm like, where's that one written? I need to hold on to that.
Yeah, I got you. And looking, like I was telling the audience, I'm looking so much forward to what we're going to be talking about today, because I think this is something, I know it's something that people don't really talk about, in their awkwardness, whatever they're feeling. And I've come a long way. I got to say, it's after reading hundreds of books, and I probably should have been in therapy, but I learned from speakers and different mentors and whatnot. But audience, I want you to type in hashtag own the awkward. And we're going to start off with the first question here to kick this off, Laura. We want to know, in your experience, what's the biggest mistake people make when they try to avoid awkward moments in networking?
I think when you're avoiding awkward, the biggest mistake is that you're just making it more awkward a lot of times. If you don't know what to say and then you're trying to make up things that make you sound smarter or different or that you fit better in the scenario, then you're probably just coming off as disingenuous. And it's better for me personally if I've learned over the years to just be myself, because ultimately, like you said, we're talking about building relationships and connections. We're not just exchanging business cards. So in that case, I want people who like my vibe. I want people who go, oh, cool, I like her genuineness. So when people are avoiding being awkward, I think they miss the opportunity to connect with the right people.
Yeah. When you said something right there about it that I certainly have felt a lot of times, in the awkwardness, it's about being ourselves is kind of what you said. And I remember when I started out, we were talking about this before the show kicked off. I went full-time in business in 2015 after 25 years in corporate. And I had that corporate mask on. So when I went into business for myself, I didn't know I was still wearing this mask. So I was behaving the corporate way. I was behaving like I thought you wanted me to be. So everything about me personally, my look, the way I dressed, everything, my website, it was all very corporate, very safe looking. You know what? I found it very hard to get business because it just blended in. And when, talking about the show leading into awkward, my awkwardness was probably more of the differentiating factor that I discovered through brand strategy. Actually, it was a career term. When I embraced that, I actually got more attention, positive attention. I was leaning into what made me, going almost recoiling, going, here's me, please don't throw rocks at me. And actually the opposite effect happened, right? Is that what we're talking about? By being yourself, people will be more likely to embrace us?
Yeah, I think what you said earlier about, am I going to show up and what are people going to think? You know, it's awkward talking to a stranger, whether you're checking out groceries at the grocery store or meeting your new banker for the first time, or me meeting you just now behind the scenes. I didn't meet you before. I set this up with Steve. So I'm thrown into like, hey, Rob, how's it going? I can't wait to be on the show. Like, that's awkward. It's not, everything is always awkward, and there's different levels of awkward. I moved to New York City with a group here called the Stylist Fashion Show. I'm their business director for whatever reason, because I met somebody who met somebody and got connected, and, you know, and the first events I was going to, I'm an environmental scientist by trade. I don't wear makeup on the regular until I started doing that show. I don't generally wear makeup. I'm very natural. I like to be comfortable in jeans. And I was coming to events where people whose their values are different than mine on the surface level. And, you know, I don't know what to expect. I've never walked in a room where the cameras are on you all the time and they're expecting you to have a look. Like, what's my look? I don't know. My look is camping and hiking. So, you know, talk about awkward, but you have to just know that, like, it's going to be awkward. Be yourself and the right people will accept you. And if they don't, then don't come back. You know, you talked about the tip groups. When I moved to Syracuse, the tip groups were off the chain. It was like, oh, come to this referral group, come to this. I can't stand those things where it's like, hi, what do you do? Hi, I do this, and here's my card. And if you know anybody that can use my services, please pass it along. Like, whoo.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of pressure. And I was saying I was so shy and introverted, so I had to conserve my social energy. But being a shy person, it was always awkward, even talking to people I knew. And so that whole idea of now doing business brought it to another level, because you hear stories about people who are in business and they're driven, and you meet people, you meet all different personalities, right? Some people are no nonsense. Like, they don't smile, they don't joke. Like, I like to laugh. Like, I don't do business with people who I'm miserable with. I just choose not to.
Calls me Darth Vader behind the scenes.
That's right. But meeting people is one thing. The other part of that, we're talking about connecting with people, is what happens after we've met somebody for the first time. So there's like follow-ups and whatnot. So I want to get into that in a second, but I actually want to acknowledge some of our viewers, some of our audience members. We have the ever supportive Yolanda Chin. She's here every week. Rules. Laura, she's always here. Great. Is a loyal supporter of the show. And Samuel Kimu. Samuel comes from somewhere else in the world, I believe, and so it's good to have you, Samuel, as always. But, when we talk about some of the things that happen after we meet somebody, right? So now it's initially awkward. And I know, as a person who is very shy and very timid, very fearful, the way I am now, like I'm not really fearful anymore. And I don't know why that is. I honestly don't know what happened to my fears. But nothing really kind of intimidates me anymore. But the follow-up conversations, how do you get past that kind of awkward follow-up where we got to reach back out to somebody because we want something? Or like, what is that like?
Yeah, well, that is a great point. And this is where, for me, the discovery of leaning into awkward came in. I'm career coach for environmental career seekers, and I've had over 250 calls, and we always talk about networking. And the thing they all want to know is, how do I make it not awkward? Or it's awkward, so I'm scared. And so the follow-up is the second point, exactly, where it's like, okay, I made it to the event. I met somebody, and maybe it's not even an event. I just reached out on LinkedIn. What do I say? But even then, I'm all about, leaning into the awkward is like leaning into the truth, to what is. So, hi, Rob, it was great meeting you the other day. I wasn't really sure what to say in person, but I'd like to follow up and ask you a question. Like, just be honest. I feel like when we're trying to avoid being awkward, we're trying to fake it. We're trying to just be real with somebody. Like, hi, I didn't know what to say then. Or even for me, if it's too awkward for you to talk to somebody in person, if you went to an event or you watched a webinar, you watched this right now, you want to follow with me, send a message that says, hey, I really wanted to talk to you at this event, but I didn't get a chance. I'd like to follow up here. And again, just be honest. If you're telling somebody, so for any digital connections, I highly encourage following the 4 agreements. So first of all, am I reaching out and being impeccable with my word? Am I speaking the truth? Am I saying why I'm connecting to you? So don't send me an email and I have no idea where I met you. Tell me where you met me, where you saw me. It doesn't have to be, you could just say, I saw you leave a comment on Yolanda's post. You don't have to do anything other than that. A friend of mine has a networking class he teaches called The Power of Loose Ties. Like, you just need a little hair of a thing. Even if it's, I read your profile, I like what you said about this. Reach out with something genuine, and then don't take their response personally. If they don't respond, you don't like their response, it's their world, their reality. Some people like to be reached out to. Personally, I think if you're on LinkedIn and you don't like people reaching out to you, you should not maybe be on it. This is what it's for.
Yeah.
And then
I like what you said before.
All of that.
I like what you said before. You sum up in one word, the way I feel and what I've learned. And so my awkwardness, really, what I found is my awkwardness is in my own head sometimes. When I feel like I'm uncomfortable, maybe during a silence, or if I feel intimidated by another person, and maybe those things are gone for me because I don't feel the intimidation anymore, because I realize everybody has faults, everybody has weaknesses and strengths, and not everybody's the same. But when you said just be real, that was a trigger for me, Laura, because I was like, if I'm just real, like the way I talk to you now is the way I talk to everybody. I don't get on a call with a potential new client. And I've had clients that are very high, I want to say high class, like very professional, very kind of suit and tie type stuff. And I'm rolling in and I'm like, hey guys, what's up? Good to meet you all, and I may sound a little gruff, but it's the way I am. It's the way I'm comfortable. And that may seem awkward to some people. And maybe this is what we're talking about, leaning into awkwardness, but being real when reaching out to somebody. I'm always like, hey man, that was a weird Zoom we had the other day, right? I don't understand what happened, with my dog jumping up on the keyboard or whatever, that was crazy. But, it made me think of something, and I roll into whatever my message is. And I think that people just get a little too much in their own heads and go, what do I say? And I think my journey's been so long, Laura. I'm like, what do you mean? What do you say? Like, what do you say as a human being to another human being? And to me, that's about the connecting part. When you're real and you're just saying what's on your mind and acknowledging an awkward moment or an awkward time or something weird that happened, you know what I found a lot of times? People go, oh, okay. Like you took the pressure off that elephant in the room. But I want to talk about this for a second, because I want to get to this awkward stuff is fascinating to me, because I came from such an awkward place. I wish I could show a video of me way back when people would not understand it. But we want to hashtag audience, hashtag awkward wins. So Laura, tell us this. Tell us maybe a time in your life when leaning into that awkward led to a breakthrough connection for you.
Yeah, I have a great story for that. And I don't want to like address the elephant in the room. I say ride the elephant in the room. If you come into some place and you're like, wow, I don't fit in here. When you introduce yourself, someone say, hi, can you help me fit in here? Because I don't feel like I do. And it'll start some crazy, interesting conversation. So one of my favorite stories is, I have tons of them. One of them is from Kenya, actually, Samuel, but I'm not going to tell that one right now. You can message me for that one. When I first moved to Syracuse, I did something what one of my other coachees coined as the Syracuse method for networking. I had a goal of meeting one person a week for coffee. This was pre-COVID, every week. And so my goal wasn't the number of people I was reaching out to. It was to have coffee. So I reached out to enough people to get that coffee date. And then when I would meet with them, I would ask them at the end of the meeting, now that you know me a little bit, who else should I reach out to? And then you have an introduction, you have one or two more people, and it's super easy. And within 6 months, I knew everyone in Syracuse. And it seems like, oh, Syracuse is a small town. But at the same time, whatever industry you're in, it's a small network. So you can very powerfully build your network in that way. But one of the persons, and I would lean into awkward in my messages, just like I'm telling you, one of the persons I reached out to was another woman who was doing consulting with the Wise Women's Business Center in Central New York, where I was interested in kind of hobnobbing. And it was around the middle of April, and I told her to have a happy Easter. And she was like, oh my God, we have to meet. I didn't know that she was a big like microbrewery person. I just was being goofy. My goofy, lean into it, be your own self. And she loved it. And her and I are really great friends. So we did work together, we did some stuff together, but we've also just stayed in touch. And it was that one thing that was like, oh, we have something in common to bond on. And then it brought us forward. But if I had sent her a corporate-y or very stuffy or, suggest template from somewhere, it would not have had that same effect.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that's a great example about when we talk about leaning into awkward, what is awkward again in our own minds, like you saying happy Easter, and this kind of, there's that hidden meaning to it that maybe only another person would understand, but you throw it out there anyway, because you don't really care. That's the magic of those moments that you're like, oh my gosh, because I've done that before in networking rooms where, look, I'm this Italian kid brought up in the suburbs of New York, 20 minutes outside of Manhattan, macaroni and meatballs every Sunday, two older brothers, we used to fight, and all this stuff. It was that way for me. But here I am. I love country music. I got cowboy boots. I got a cowboy hat. I'm a fan of Nashville. I'm always listening to country music. I love the vibe and the culture of it all. And I don't know anything about it other than what I hear in the song. So one day I'm in a network meeting, and I put on my cowboy hat and I said, by the way, if anybody loves country music, I love country music. I don't care what anybody says. It's the best music in the world. And there was like two people in the room that were like, yeah, they were fist pumping, and they became immediate connections for me. Why? Because I threw out something where, look, I love my cowboy hat, and when it rains here and I'm walking my dog, I wear the cowboy hat. I don't carry an umbrella. I'm wearing my cowboy hat to shield myself. And a lot of people are like, man, that's a nice hat. You should wear it all the time. I'm like, I'm in New York. Like, nobody's wearing cowboy hats in New York. So is it awkward? Maybe, but not necessarily, because the right people will connect and the wrong people will just be like, well, that's weird. And I go, that's your problem. But then I want to flip something, Laura, because something you were talking about, and it prompted a thought in me. When we're talking about awkward, all this while, I think we're talking about I'm awkward in the scenario. But there's times when I'm not awkward, the other person's awkward, and I want to help that. And I want to give an example. Maybe you can elaborate on it. A simple thing. One time, this happens often enough, right? We meet people, we forget their names. It happens to me, even though I've got methods for remembering names. Sometimes I forget to apply the method, and then I don't remember the name. And sometimes, a lot of times, right? We meet another person, we know we've met them, we remember their name, and it's obvious they don't remember ours. Now what? It's not awkward for me because I don't really care. It's awkward for them, and they can't get past it in their minds. And you can see this, right? I know, like you've been through this so much. You can see it in their minds. They're like, "What's this guy's name? What's this guy's name?" So I will say something like, "Here's my tip," and I want you to expand on the awkwardness in others, right? So I know that's happening, and I'll go, "Yeah, it's like my wife says to me sometimes. She's like, Rob, let me tell you something." So I use my own name in kind of an example, and then it's almost like they're like, you see a sigh of relief knowing, like, okay, that's this guy's name, because I know what happens. You can't remember a person's name. You can't think of anything to say because you're going, what is this person's name? What is this person's name, right? So I remove that awkward from other people in an example like that. But tell us about what we can do to help other people through awkward moments.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I have my podcast co-host that I'm on a podcast. He just was at a conference, and he was telling me that that same thing happened to him. He met somebody who he thought was somebody that he actually did two things in one. He told one person, called them the wrong name, and then he met the other person who was that person and then couldn't remember the right name. And so he had a twofer at the conference. But so I will share that with him. I think that's great advice. But for me, I think now that I'm this far established in my making connections career, I'm helping people when I see it. I'm just going to call it out and be like, when I go to an event, I'm going to a lot of film things, a lot of mixers, and I usually will look for the person who looks like they have no one to talk to. Like for me, especially when you first get there, an easy person to talk to. I met a guy at one event I went to, he was with his wife, and there's another great people to approach. People who are just standing by themselves, not doing anything. So,
that's usually me.
So you can tell that they're awkward. They don't know what to do themselves. So I will just talk to them and they appreciate it. This person came to one of my networking events 6 months later, actually a year later. And so, they remember you when you do kindnesses like that. So when you see somebody else fumbling or being awkward, I think, like you said, giving an assist is great and not taking it personally. If someone doesn't remember your name, who cares? And that's one of those in your head things where like, am I being awkward? Is this weird? When I meet somebody, I can't remember their name. The first thing I say is, let me get on this elephant and say, hi, I forgot your name. Can you tell me again? I don't apologize. Like, it happens to everyone. Why should I be expected to remember everyone's name that I met once a year ago?
I think that's the thing. It's like when we understand that others feel like we feel in the awkward moments, it should cancel each other out. And we should go, yeah, what are you going to do? You shrug it off, So like, I'll say something like, I'm so sorry. I keep thinking your name is Sarah, but it's not. Right. And they'll go, oh, it's Laura. And again, that little thing sets people at ease and removes the awkwardness of the whole name thing. But I think owning up to it, own up to the fact that you're feeling awkward about something, because in connecting, if we don't listen, audience, if you don't remove your awkwardness fast, you won't be able to have a proper conversation. You won't be able to properly connect because they sense the awkwardness and they don't know what it is either. But if it's the ball's in your court, audience, just call it, just own it, right, Laura?
Exactly. Once you've addressed the awkward and you bring it out into the light, you take the power away from it. So you are now able to just have a good time, enjoy yourself, and see what happens. The other thing is it's awkward because you are often looking for an outcome. Stop looking for an outcome. I'm just here to have a good time and talk to a couple of people. I go to events and my goal is not to talk to everyone in the room. I want to talk to 5 good people, maybe who are just a good conversation. And maybe I follow up with one of them actually goes somewhere and maybe none goes anywhere. So if you're depending on your journey and your experience with this sort of thing, it might just be a goal for you to show up and to awkwardly stand in the corner, but just know that that's fine. No one's going to judge you or remember.
I think that's great advice to not have a specific outcome in mind. Because I used to walk into networking events and it's like, I need to meet 15 people. I need to get 15 cards. And it's such a stupid goal because it makes it more of a collection and then really a connecting. And so without having an absolute outcome, like I need to get 1 customer out of this networking event, like really? That's not really the way things go. We know that. So that's great advice, but we're going to wrap up here, but I want you to give us your hottest tip for overcoming awkwardness in the initial interaction. What's your best tip for people that they can use tomorrow?
Yeah, my best tip is to grab a cup. So if you go to an event and you're feeling awkward, nervous, whatever, even if you're not drinking or your coffee, tea, whatever it is, just have something in your hand because it makes it, but for whatever reason, it's not like also awkward. What do I do with my hands? And you can and if you're standing, so you look for people in singles or thirds because it's harder to break into a conversation of 2 because they're locked in on each other. I've done that before and I'm standing there and they're like, nope, we're not even going to look at you. And I'm like, damn it. And so sometimes I'll pick up my phone. I got a call. I'm going to go. But if you have something in your hand, it's easier to just kind of stand there. You have something to do. If you don't, then you're like, what do I do? So that is my number 1 tip. And it's very simple, but I think it is helpful.
And that is great. I never thought about that, but that's absolutely 100% true. When you've got one thing in your hand, because otherwise, what are you going to do with 2 hands? Well, if you remove one of them, then you're good to go. That's an excellent tip. I actually got to remember that when I walk in a room because I tend to stick my hands in my pockets and it's not the best confident look, but certainly having a cup in your hand, like grab a cup of water or a drink, whatever, but that's great. So listen, Laura, we got to wrap this thing up, but tell our audience the best way to connect with you.
Best way to connect me is on LinkedIn. It's Laura Jean Thorne. And if you can't find me there, you can email me at laurajeanthorne with an E @gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been an excellent, and we ran out of time as we always do so fast when the conversation is great. But thank you so much for your time, Laura.
Thanks.
If you want to hang around the green room, we can talk afterwards. If you got to run, I understand. But thank you again.
Thanks.
Wow, that was pretty powerful. I hope you guys got a lot out of that. And if I didn't get to your comments, I apologize. Running solo today, it's a little tough because I'm working the controls. Somebody asked me the other day, Rob, how do you and Steve do the show? You got somebody working the controls? No, we don't. We're each working the controls. And by the way, if you're curious, Samuel's from Kenya. Tuning in from Kenya. Thank you, Samuel, for tuning in, and always Yolanda, always coming in to 10. But listen, today we had a great conversation about leaning into that awkward. If you're one of those awkward people still, after all this time, I know people that in their 50s and their 60s, they're still awkward. You think with age it would go away. It does not. You've got to work on it. And so I want to tell you a story, and it's a little bit of my story. I was awkward and frightened into my 30s. And so that fear, a lot of times, that fear is, what is the other person thinking about me? Gets in there and makes us awkward. A mentor once said to me, Rob, you're self-conscious. And I go, yeah, that's right. I'm self-conscious. They go, no, you're self-conscious. You're conscious of yourself. And that's not how it works. You got to be others conscious. You have to be thinking about the other person. You have to be removing the awkwardness from them. You have to make it so that you're setting them at ease. See, a lot of connection isn't about us at all. It's about making that other person feel so comfortable with us that the same mentor, he said, Rob, you want to be like an old shoe. You slip your foot in an old shoe, right? It's so comfortable. It doesn't even feel like you're wearing anything. You want to be an old shoe around people where you feel so comfortable around them. They're like, man, I felt like I knew that person forever. Isn't that what we're striving for? So listen, take that one thing and take what Laura said. Use her tips. Understand that a lot of people feel awkward and it's okay, but it shouldn't stay that way. You've got to work on removing it, because you want to know why? It's the Master Connector Show. We want you to connect. We want you to be a master at connecting. In order to do that, you got to get over these things. So listen, thank you all for tuning in today. I hope I conducted the show well. Steve is going to be back next week. I'm excited to have him back. But listen, next week we have May 21st. We have episode 212, Rise and Go with Corey Carlson. It's going to be another great show. Amazing, amazing guests always coming at us. Thank you all for joining. Have a great week, and we will see you next week. Bye now.
And you start to hear some of their challenges, and yes.
Because it speaks to the core of who you are and what drives you forward. Because what makes you different is what drives